So yeah,
Hmm.
decided to record one of our conversations for once, just because we thought they were interesting, and then so we just chose this topic, escapism, and so now we're just gonna dive right into it. Um, I think I wanted to start with a definition of escapism. So if you wanted to give yours,
Hmm. So it'd be very easy to describe literally any engaging activity that isn't furthering your career as a kind of escapism.
right?
Um, the definition I'm going to give is any activity you engage with that distracts you from quote unquote real world that is mentally engaging enough to actually accomplish that.
Yeah. So like,
Hmm.
restaurants aren't necessarily escapism.
No, neither would sports be.
So is escapism necessarily solitary?
Solitary, almost always, but I don't think it has to be really. If you get somebody with like the exact kind of like mindset for an activity, because it's really not enough that they do the activity with you. They have to have the exact kind of mindset.
Uh, so like, so like a deeper experience than like a game of checkers.
Yeah.
I might go a bit broader. I might include checkers and stuff like that as escapism, and like football and whatever leisure.
Hmm.
It's kind of hard to describe escape. I guess you know what differentiates escapism from leisure is pretty much in the name. You're using it
Hmm.
to temporarily escape from the negatives of the world, I think. Hmm. Nailing down a definition is already kind of difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of figured it'd be kind of hard to separate it from just any kind of leisure. So.
Yeah. Um, I guess we have a loose grasp on it, so that might serve our purposes. At least we'll just go with kind of our gut feeling for the moment. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess the first point is why would you do that?
Let's have you go first.
All right. Well, there's plenty of scenarios you can think of where someone has a particularly hard life, or there's sad things that happen, or
Mhm.
just particularly difficult things that they're facing, and in the nature of levity, basically coping. People will do that to pretty much just give them a break and let them rest and fight stronger another day or later on.
Not to be too much of a downer, but like my granddad had a saying, uh, life's a bitch and then you die, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like more so on that, it's where we get this whole concept of hyper reality, where like just the things that you would escape to, whether it be like, I don't know, like Warhammer, like these deep settings that you would like envision yourself being in,
Mm-hmm.
they're much more dramatic in every way that that word can be used in real life.
Yes, it's like idealized kind of a new reality that you can craft for yourself.
Hmm.
And that I guess that gets into like a more progressed version of escapism where you just rather would spend your time committed to that than not. Not like so like there's a continuum here of how much escapism you're engaging in. Um and some people end up, valuing whatever escapist uh I guess what would the word be? Escapist realities
Hmm.
than the current one. Um,
Yeah.
and you have to tend to reality up to a certain point. So it's not like if you want to just keep on living, right? So the why can be very complex.
Yeah, word you're looking for, Tim, that would be ideality.
Yeah, here I'm gonna try to balance both of you guys' volume levels. Uh, so CEO, you say something?
Yeah, you need to at least get your bills paid. You need to get your food, right? Um, what do you consider the gym to be a kind of escapism?
Only in as much as you aren't valuing what you get out of the gym as much as the act of going to the gym.
Mhm. Okay, now this is going to be a point of differentiation between us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think you can value what you get out of escapism, whether it be like, I don't know, like say I have a completed model, right, that I did for like Warhammer, right? Or whether I have some tangible physical gains from the gym. So like in any kind of project that I would actually engage in for like my career, like those things are entirely unnecessary, basically. I would still consider that to be totally within the bounds of escapism. Like even doing those things only to have these tangible gains at the end of it all, that at the same time,
Yeah,
for things that most people wouldn't really consider to be at all beneficial to my career, right?
there's almost like a well, there's like a subset of things that is definitely not escapism, and it's things that you have to do that you would rather not do.
Yeah, you need to go to the grocery store, you need to work, you need to fucking file your taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure that everything that you do want to do counts as escapism. It kind of, in a cosmic sense, it can because everything,
Hmm.
the whole meaning of your existence is self-determined.
I would agree with that. Yeah, you have this Petersonian
Petersonian.
yeah, it's concept that he talks about certain diseased people not being able to cope with the tragedy of existence, right? So like whenever we engage in escapism, we are kind of engaging in like let's hope a more healthy form of coping, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just easing the pains of everyday life, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there? I guess. Well, we're still on our the why bullet point, which we're still kind of touching on anyway. And then I guess we've kind of bled into kinds. There's so much to be said on the topic. I'm having a hard time like keeping everything consistent and straight on it. We're kind of winging it without notes right now, so yeah, bear with us. Um,
So, on the topic of whys, when it comes to escapism, there's like a lot of emphasis. It's like, oh, it's about getting away from like the just sheerness of life. But I like recall like when I was like younger, like back when I was a kid, I really one of the reasons why I liked video games, movies, books, and all that stuff wasn't because I was trying to get away from real life, just because the stories and so forth within that media was just very interesting. Like I wasn't trying to escape from reality.
maybe
I was
not
more or less
explicitly, but it's just offering more intellectual or emotional satisfaction than reality does.
yeah, it's like yeah, like exactly like that. Just sort of like taking a holiday, more or less, instead of like trying to get away from reality. It's just a cool place, and I want to go hang out there.
Which, yeah, escapism does. I don't guess it doesn't necessarily have to mean you find the reality to be openly hostile, right?
Yeah, we just
Uh,
the entire like term of escapism has that idea baked into its terminology
Yeah.
that it's about getting away from stuff as opposed to just like hospice. That'd be the word. Hospice a word.
Hospice, sanctuary. Sanctuary still implies hostilities.
Different kinds of escapism will have different whys as the root cause. They have this kind of hyper reality in different aspects, right? So they kind of soothe a different problem you might have, like your day to day life.
So, when you wrote down different kinds of escapism, what were you thinking in terms of?
Okay, so um, there are a number of fundamental things I would say that young men desire, right? And to the extent that, yeah, so they want to be the hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they want to cure their loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I would say those are the two biggest things, right? You got all matter of like action media, whether it be like
I'd say there's a
absurd or
third. There might be a
fantastical.
third one. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Mm. What would you say? What would you say it was?
Third one would be creativity,
Hmm. Well, that expression, yeah,
expression.
expression, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. But yeah, like you got like all matter of action media to kind of like paint this picture of what it'd be like to be the hero, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, video games are going to be the best medium for this, right?
Yep.
Uh, like strangely enough,
Overcoming.
like romance media, like romance games don't really do that much better of a job of just painting a kind of pleasant picture than I would say romance movies, strangely enough.
Games versus
And in
movie.
regards
Yeah.
to yeah, in regards to expression, yeah, then you got like more hobby based things. Uh, well, more what you would consider engaging hobby based.
Artistic
Yeah,
engagements.
yeah, that's the word I was
I'm
looking
I'm
for. Yeah.
directly thinking of like Minecraft.
Hmm. Well, I'm thinking of drawing, or even strangely
Yeah.
enough, bodybuilding.
Well, as much as artistic like pursuit can be considered escapism, I guess
Hmm.
it's in the realm of escapism. Um, but I guess also baked into like kind of the term escapism is kind of a presumption of what is to be considered valuable,
Hmm.
where I mean, I guess this is commonly accepted anyway, but you know, forming connections with people, going to school, getting a job, starting a family is the de facto thing that your life will require to have any value.
Hmm.
Um, and I've come up against people who are very hard line on something like that, where it's like, well, if you're not, exercising, or if you're not, let's say, pursuing the same type of lifestyle that I think is appropriate, um, you are, you're living a low value life. You but generally you're doing bad. You're doing worse.
The kinds of people who will try to get other people to engage in behavior they themselves, quote, find valuable, unquote, rarely find those things fulfilling in their own personal life. Um, but that's an entirely separate point
Yeah.
from like the really escapism.
The idea being, I do want to say that I do value human connection,
Mm-hmm.
IRL, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something I've been working towards expanding in my own life. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not to say that that is to the exclusion of connection with other people online, or my artistic pursuits, or anything else really that I find valuable that isn't commonly valued among people. Yeah, like, I guess on that topic, my conclusion is just, whoever you are the artist, and your life is the canvas. And the value of art is, while there are trends, while there are commonly accepted standards for value, ultimately it's up to you whether to adopt those, or forge your own, or modify them, perhaps.
The other thing I wanted to say on the topic, the tangent was that probably crabs in the bucket mentality, this like, okay, I'm miserable, why aren't you, is probably going to be the most common reason
Or,
that
yeah,
people try to enforce their own values
I'd
on you.
go I'd go a bit better faith with that. I would say the people may be happy with the choices they've made, but they project their own perspective onto your choices and conclude that that is miserable.
I think that's also possible. I'm not going to rule out either possibility.
Yeah, I'm not going to assume people are miserable, but yeah. So escapism, I guess, kind of the concept can be applied very broadly or very narrowly. It's kind of hard, actually, to um to have a concrete like limit on this is escapism versus this is not escapism.
Well, like to summarize an idea that we had,
Because,
it's like
especially, well, I'll
is
say, especially to the point where if you make escapism or creating escapism your job, that is like really gonna blur the lines.
mhm. Is like any activity that kills time that like you don't need to strictly do just to live escapism, like
Right. It's like what counts as cope, basically.
uh
And at the end of the day, the entirety of the meaning derived from human existence is cope, for the fact that there is no inherent meaning in the universe. So yeah, that doesn't mean that meaning isn't valuable. That doesn't mean anything about that. It's just kind of illuminating to the origins of meaning. So your third point, when it's healthy, I think we can agree that there's a certain point where when the escapism starts interfering with your sustainability of your life, is a point where it's gone too far.
You want to be truly functional at your job. You want to be making enough to at least sustain yourself, right?
Right.
Working enough hours.
You don't want to be a drain on the people around you in a tangible sense of like you are financially draining people around you, and making their lives worse off due to the burden of your existence.
Yeah.
I know that there's people who like to take that and expand it to, well, you existing and doing what you want to do that's against other people's wishes counts as harm towards them, which obviously that's asinine. At least to me, that's obvious.
In regards to more what's healthy, we are going to have a much broader realm for what could be considered healthy escapism. A lot of people might.
Right.
Um, channel.
Oh yeah.
Healthy Gamer GG has like so many videos on the subject. I'm not sure how like genuine the guy is on a lot of subjects, but like here, I think he's being dead genuine whenever he does this topic.
Escapism. Where does he not blame people for choosing escapism?
Oh no, not at all. Quite the opposite, really.
What was that? I had a point I was also gonna go down. Shoot. Lost it. When it's healthy, let's see. Oh, I was gonna say that this distinction I made is also why I'm against drug use, just on a very
Mhm.
personal level.
I think like the topic of like drug use, it's like I've met like people who engage in like tobacco and right and I personally I absolutely despise drug use myself a lot, but then I like had a couple friends in high school. They like when they fucking well after they left high school they used to came out and hang with them and they bloody, like they were really into like tobacco and just smoking and all that. But the
Yeah,
thing is, right, is that unlike like the average person, like the average cigarette smoker that was just buying their pack to get their fix that day, they were like bloody, like they were making a whole experience out of it. Like they had a whole smoking lounge set up in their like basement and fucking all sorts of like atmosphere and that.
they made it cool.
Um, yeah, they literally they made it cool. They actually did pipes and cigars, and I'm just like, they're actually like trying. It's like it wasn't just about the fix, basically, with them. It was actually about
Hmm.
more than just that. In the same way where it's like you got the people, in the same way where it's like video games are like these super artistic guys, totally, and then you have like the people who are like just fucking loading up goddamn Call of Duty Warzone every day to be right because the only
I
thing
don't
that
think
makes them
those people
feel
would
anything
claim
anymore
would make
is
those
a
like
number,
claims.
is the big kill streak number they rack up. You know what I mean?
Hmm. But maybe that's beyond the point. Is games are very artistic, but there's also people who just use games to shoot up, as in
Yeah,
like the entertainment is their drug.
yeah.
Um, which I
You know,
watched. I
like
recently watched a video by J Reg on. He made that analogy with his own content, where he's like, "Well, no longer are we artists; we are drug dealers because we're making content that people will just break up and snort."
yeah.
In his very metaphorical way. Highly recommend J Reg. He's cool. Um, hmm. So yeah, that I guess on the drugs thing, I'm like pretty much against it. I don't trust myself. Is the thing. I think my personality would become addicted to those. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think you would.
I've already spent enough of my energy drinking chocolate milk. That's my worst vice is food wise is sugar. Yeah, I try to keep that in check. I eat like once a day, so
I mean, there's like a point where it's like sugar's alright. It's just too much sugar,
too
and they
much.
just
Yeah,
put sugar in everything, really.
I mean that. Yeah,
Like that whole meme about American bread having sugar in it and it tastes like cake to foreigners. I don't know.
yeah.
I never had American
What
bread, but
doesn't
like
have
that's like a
sugar in
thing.
it? Anything with high fructose corn syrup is going to be sugar, right? 'Cause that's what fructose is all about. Dude,
I
I'm
think
stupid. I don't know.
you know what? I think that whole like a little tangential. I think that whole high fructose corn syrup. I think that's only a problem in America, because
Maybe.
in like a lot of other, because like for example, in like Australia, we just put cane sugar in everything,
Mm-hmm.
like Coca-Cola. Like that whole thing about Mexican Coke.
What
Mhm.
about it?
And people are like importing Coke from Mexico into America because it
I
tastes
have.
different and better. And the entire reason why is because Coca-Cola in America is bottled with high fructose corn syrup,
Mm.
while
My
Coca-Cola in Mexico is bottled with cane sugar.
my electromagnetic fields professor like had like this specialty store he'd go to get like Mexican made Dr. Pepper.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of little like Mexican shops around. It's pretty
Mhm.
cool. I guess on the topic of escapism, um, there's the idea of like when it's healthy and when it's not, and then there's the idea of should anything be done about people who use it in an unhealthy way.
Remember that meme? Um, I'm sure you can dig up and find it and put it somewhere. It's like the dude hooked up to a machine that has like Harry Potter movies being in porn being played on like a fucking
Yeah, yeah, that's
that
exactly the
meme.
image I had in mind was that meme.
Of course it is, yeah.
And I've seen recently YouTube or short fat otakus talking about that there is an inherent uh like aversion people have to that image where you're like, yeah, that's kind of fucked up actually. But
Hmm.
the question remains, should you stop that person?
You
Um
look at it logically, and if anything, they're only hurting themselves.
in
So I would
if
say,
they're a person who, I mean, clearly by the fact that they're doing this to themselves, they know what the fuck they're doing.
uh,
um, they like you can speculate on why they're doing that,
mhm.
but the question at the end of the day is, should people be allowed to do terrible things to themselves, um, or should they be restricted?
The stance that we probably both have on drugs, and I know I have for all kinds of other behaviors I consider to be grotesque,
Hmm.
that at the same time don't hurt other people, is I will have a personal conviction that I will not enforce on literally anybody else, especially by law.
Yeah, because you run into the problems of the gray areas whenever you try to
Mhm.
enforce something like that. You have there's people who use the thing you banned responsibly, um, who you're now just saying, well, this thing that may have marginally improved your mood and everything like that, is no longer allowed because some people at the wrong end of the bell curve used it irresponsibly.
How many times a day do you, jerk off?
This
Twice?
goes for, yeah, this goes for anything. This goes for gaming, this goes for pornography. Yeah, goes for drug usage.
See, you need to get yourself some of this. We call this
This
cocaine.
went for prohibition as well. Back in the day, they prohibited alcohol, and we saw how well that went. There was a immediately like a black market for it. Um,
Uh
and nobody actually stopped
huh.
drinking. It's just that it all went
So,
underground.
there are two things that result in the creation of a black market, right?
Hmm.
You have something being illegal, and that thing also being relatively easy to produce.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
Like at least back in that day, you didn't have the internet. You couldn't like use the internet just to go find out how to cook
that's
meth.
what we see
You know
with
what I mean?
emulation and fan games even. um, you're gonna be able to
hmm
get your hands on AM2R. Maybe it won't be, super public on how you can do that, and you can get your hands on Yuzu, even though that Nintendo seized it legally. You can still get your hands on it. Um,
they seized it.
they did.
Okay.
But
I thought they
yeah,
sent like a cease and desist or like a big
well,
one, but
part of their agreement
yeah.
was that they ceded all ownership of the Yuzu brand and their their online domains and all of that and their assets to Nintendo.
Okay.
But the
I
fact that it's
see.
open source means it was already too late.
Hmm.
And so now there's a black market for Yuzu simulators or emulators, sorry, which are already being worked on apparently, like just continuing where they left off. Um, but yeah, black markets. That's a problem with banning anything that's easily accessible. Um, and I was also talking like the moral argument as well of you know, moderate users being cheated out of something that they otherwise would have gotten access to. That's not really a detriment to anybody.
Man, I tell you, them drunk crashers give us drunk drivers a bad name.
But yeah,
Hmm.
that's why
So
I'm
yeah.
pretty much in every case a libertarian, because I believe that people should not be prevented from making mistakes of their own free will and you know, hurting themselves if they're that stupid. And this goes doubly for any mistakes I make. If one of my lifestyle decisions is a mistake, let me face the consequences of that and course correct.
I mean, when you put it like that, it's like, yeah, and it's just true. A big part of libertarian thought is not it's spending energy to correct the stupid.
It's yeah, you can better allocate that energy somewhere else instead of having a surveillance state,
uh,
right?
yeah.
Um, yeah,
There was another I think we've covered well, like what's healthy and what's not to a third degree.
yeah,
Um, and the summary of that is effectively you want to be financially independent enough to not be a net drain on the people around you.
yes. You want to
Mhm.
essentially be responsible for yourself and your property, and that's really the only obligation you should be required to maintain by law, or I guess
Mhm.
not even by law, just I guess by society as well, where
So
you know you're not basically leeching off of anybody else.
this one is going to be kind of interesting because it's probably the one where, in theory, the biggest gap in our knowledge is because I haven't thought much about it at all. The future of certain escapism avenues.
Right. So I'm assuming this is going into the realm of VR,
Well,
and
that
beyond.
recently, mhm. You had Sweet Baby recently. They're getting under a lot of fire. They're
What's
laying
that?
off a lot of people. They're the company that would have like help gaming companies write stories that netted them ESG points.
Sweet Baby is a ESG company.
Sweet
Mhm.
Baby is the company that wrote all the wokeness into all of the video game, like basically it was
Oh,
they would all of your like Horizon Zero Dawn, right? Like
Mhm.
like all the games where it's just like it's important that our story is a story about women, and then it's like
where they pretty much like told the
you know th-
writers like you should really make your story about this and that, whether or
Uh-huh.
not they actually wanted to.
the right like what it is, right? What it is like the writers are just like the writers are at Sweet Baby Inc. are just completely devoid of any amount of creativity, so they
Mhm.
basically just write fucking they basically just write some generic and another nothing story about strong like minority characters, and
Or like a
It-
try
I mean,
so if you try and dissent on them and call them bad at their job, they just say you're a bigot. Because
Uh,
that's
It,
the
it's
fucking world we live in. These people suck at writing that much.
honestly, yeah.
it's
If it's a bad
effectively
story, it's a bad story, pretty much.
it's like effectively a kind of protection racket, which is deeply ironic because companies have a bad habit of getting too dependent on ESG to the point where they're just willing to eat loss after loss because they can keep borrowing from the fund.
Ooh. So that means so what that's basically doing is meaning that their bottom line is less and less affected by whether or not they actually sell anything.
Correct. Correct.
uh yeah. That's cringe. But I mean, it's not like they can completely become independent of whether or not they sell to anybody, because there's never going to become a point where the grants outweigh the market's demand for a good game.
hmm well, here's the counter to this: making the good game is hard. Making ESG friendly trash is easy.
Yeah.
It's not fucking hard. It's not hard to make a good game. Like look at
Oh,
fucking Lethal
so
Company.
this is what you meant by the future of escapism, is like, do you think that escapism is going
Well,
down the
this is
drain?
this is one this is one avenue because recently they got outed.
I think
Their
AAA
influence.
may have a
Uh,
collapse at some point.
we're talking AAA gaming in
Yeah.
particular, but you were mentioning oh, VR, right?
Hmm.
It's hard to imagine any VR product that comes from anything but AAA that has any degree of I don't know, effort put into it.
Well, I mean, we're getting
What?
VR from Steam, from Valve.
Mhm.
I think I think the two actual funnest VR games that I looked into were both like smaller projects. Like they weren't AAA or anything.
I
Like
would
Half-Life
say,
Alyx.
yeah, Half-Life.
Half-Life Alyx is probably like the one AAA game I can actually even think of that's actually like cool.
Right.
But like as far as I think like as far as VR goes, bloody like I think about these two games I don't remember their names, but one of them was a game where you essentially were a god and you could plonk down like tiles of land in this world, and the VR actual like aspect of it like really sort of lended itself to that immersion because you would essentially the way you would like plonk down land and eventually your land would get big enough people would be on it and you would just like drag yourself across it with your hands,
That's cool.
you know,
It's
sort of
it's not.
like you would have to like handhold onto a mountain and then pull yourself forward to get your camera to move.
Hmm.
And I think the part and this thing right like it was like very much like it was just a game about just playing God, and the VR perspective really enhanced that. Especially, I think probably the best example of this is that in the game, because you're a god, you have people who worship you on your land, and you can get heretics who are like denouncing you. And what you do with heretics is that they're going to make people your other
Well, here's
citizens
what
like
you do: you
unhappy.
create the
So,
world, and then you do
right?
nothing.
Yeah. No, dude, it's great. Like they're fucking heretics, and a part of the game is just like, hey, you should get rid of them. But the game doesn't tell you how to get rid of them. You get to figure out yourself. And my personal favorite, like, you literally can just get them, reach down, pluck them up by like their little red cultist hood, and you can like go over. You can drown them in a lake. You can bash them against the side of a
Oh my
mountain. And my
god.
personal favorite is to go to the edge of the map that you've been building and just cast them into the void.
That's basically you send them to hell.
Yeah.
That sounds really
But
fun.
like maybe I had a
Yeah,
mistake.
like yeah. And that game was by no means like a massive fucking AAA
Right.
project. That game
What
was
you're going
like,
to
you
see
know,
is more innovation
low
happening
poly.
in VR from indie developers than anything else.
Would it not be more expensive to make Space Marine 2 in VR than like what it is?
It's
I mean,
also the
so a
control
bunch.
scheme is weird. You're going to need
Uh huh.
a lot of concessions for certain types of games. It's really conducive to a game where you're just sitting there and looking in front of you.
hmm
I mean, a bunch of modders just like made Elden Ring VR.
Yeah, people are able to do some conversions with some caveats. The big thing about VR games is traversal. You're not going to make it feel seamless.
Hmm.
People have tried using treadmills and stuff, and it always looks super like gross and like cumbersome and not actually
I
like
mean, I
feeling
saw
like you're
this
moving.
like prototype technology they made, which is I don't quite remember, but basically you would just tack a bunch of these little hexagons on the ground in like basically to make a mat. And these hexagons, I don't know what the fuck kind of magic they imbued in them, but you could literally run on the spot on them, and they weren't like some cumbersome treadmill that had to hold you in place. It wasn't even electrically powered. You could just run across. You could literally
Your
just
foot
run on the
slides?
spot on these hexagons. Yeah, like your foot slides.
Hmm. That's interesting. It's still not going to feel like walking. Cuz like no matter what you do, like all the feedback you get from actually moving and walking is going to be different than whatever they come up with.
Hold on, babe. I need to get my cardio in. Let me go play Walking Simulator 2024
Yeah.
edition.
I mean, you got like Beat Saber that people use for exercise, right?
Fucking stupid ass walk 'em up games.
Walk 'em ups. An actual walking simulator, yeah. Well, that's what QWOP is, I guess.
Sure, Co-op is a walking simulator.
It is. It actually is. But as for the future of VR, I think there might be a limit, like until we have basically pair of glasses that you put on that is not cumbersome at all. There's gonna be like a resistance to using VR. It's just not
Mm-hmm.
convenient at all.
The Sword Art Online Netgear, right?
Something, or
Or
yeah,
just puts you
if you
asleep
just
and
go to
stuff like.
sleep and you wake up in a virtual world, there's a death. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
then we're like it gets weird because it's like what counts as what separates that from a dream.
Well, the fact that it's heavily,
Well,
heavily, heavily controlled.
a manipulated dream, sure.
Uh-huh.
For to me, that always kind of felt lame. Like it's like, oh, you made it not cool anymore now that it's a dream. I don't know. To me, it kind of takes away because after after a certain point, it feels like there's no permanence to it. I don't know. I don't know.
But yeah, another thing that kind of needs to be talked about is like, I guess, pornography more broadly.
Mm-hmm. Advancements in that,
Um,
those are, you know, at least
mhm.
they seem to be happening. We see more concern for it these days. AI.
I, mhm. I don't. I think it's the chosen opium of the powers that be, so I don't think it'll ever really be legalized. And I think, strangely enough, a lot of the advancements that you're going to see in things like VR are going to come in more convincing robotics. Let me put it that way. Are going to come from that industry.
Yeah, from China.
Mhm.
Places where they, I don't know, places where they haven't basically regulated it to hell and back to the point where you need to
Mhm.
ask a robot's consent.
You need to ask the robot's consent.
Yeah. Um, but there's two avenues it'll go down. It's the robot avenue and it's the VR avenue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for the time being, I think the VR avenue is more accessible. It's more approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because there's like whatever ergonomics issues there are with VR, just multiply that by 10 with dolls and robots, because you are now lugging around something that is extremely heavy.
I mean, I think part of the appeal of Android girls is that they are like way heavier than they look.
He's like, now I will choose to enter the conversation. But yeah, it's like until they get to the point where they are basically, cave story robots or whatever other insert fictional robot here, but in real life, where they can essentially get up, take care of themselves, even clean themselves if they need to. It's gonna be a uphill battle to maintain one of these.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the rewards may not even be worth all that effort, unless you're just an enthusiast and that's just kind of what you want to do. There's a lot of things like that where I'm seeing, even if we're talking about emulation, all these new devices coming out. I've been diving into this topic lately, but there's people who own every single one of them just because they like the idea of them, and they want to just be an enthusiast, a hobbyist. So those people will exist, but for the vast majority of people, one just selling them on one will be an uphill battle. And that's not even taking into account like people's hangups with it in general, with dolls and robots.
Mm-hmm.
This is just purely on the maintenance point, and that's why I'm not an owner.
The maintenance.
Dude, I'm serious.
I know. Like the synthetic skin needs to be cleaned, and other
Well, it's
things need to
like a
get cleaned.
rubbery
Uh-huh.
silicon type thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We kind of wrapped up in about half the time I expected we would.
The
Conclusions.
future of certain escapism avenues. I mean, there's more we could dive into with like
Okay.
AAA. AAA might face a bubble bursting if they are focusing more on ESG than pleasing customers, and they don't reverse course. It will be like a bubble bursting event where just massive layoffs. I mean, we're seeing it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think Skull and Bones might be that because Skull and Bones they want to say like it's a quadruple A game,
I
and
have
like
not
people
seen
were
anything
not
about that
very
game.
impressed. People were not very impressed with like the open. I think they just did like an open like test. Skull and Bones is like a new Ubisoft game that they're making that's supposed to be, oh hey guys, remember Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag and how that was the best game in the series? They're making an entire game that is just that. But literally like this is an entire game that's supposed to be Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but just the piracy part, the part where you're like driving
Oh,
the
that's
ship
cool.
around. And Assassin's Creed Black Flag, despite the fact that that was just one, like that was like one half of the game, but Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is more of that game than the Skull and Bones is. Like if you in
Oh,
like
I
in
get what you're
Assassin's
saying.
Creed 4 Black Flag, you would drive your ship into port and then and then physically like run off it onto the docks and then into the town, or if you were or when you attacked another ship and you could board them and you would have a sword fight where you could jump between your own ship and their ship. Skull and Bones has neither of those features. It is literally just you go to a dock, you press button, and then loading screen, and then you're in the town,
It's like
right?
Starfield claiming to be
And you
like the
can't
best
even
open world
board
game, and
people.
then
It's a piracy. It's a game about being a pirate, and you can't
yeah.
even fucking goddamn board another person's ship. It's just you press button and then you just get cutscene where you bloody float off and you blow up their ship anyway.
Yeah.
Do you see me? I'm in charge now. That is super lame though. Yeah. A piracy
Yeah.
game where you can't board another ship.
I haven't been like well, I don't know if there's ever been a point. I guess unless you count Nintendo games as AAA, there's never been a point where a AAA game was like a must-have for me.
Devil May Cry 5, Monster Hunter World. I am still gonna get Dragon's Dogma 2. I guess 1 wasn't really AAA, quote unquote. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But like
Thing-
Capcom is ironically enough probably my favorite developer. Go figure.
Well, now,
Maybe Elden Ring, but I don't know
think
that was
you-
a must-have.
I think you just. I think but with the Tim, the year 2022 is literally the year Elden Ring came out. That's literally what it's going to be remembered as in history. Shut
No,
up.
I'm saying for me, was it a must-have before I bought it? In my view,
Yes.
I think
Oh well, well, Tim, you're a Nintendo, and so like your idea of a must-have is the next Legend of Zelda.
ironically, I
It's
still haven't
what-
played Tears of the Kingdom, so
What if
Yeah,
I
yeah, but
told you
that's the caricature of you that I've maintained in my head.
oh, okay, yeah.
they made the same game, Tim, but you see they made it 5 years later. They called it something different.
Yeah, that's really what one of the things that made me not go for Tears of the Kingdom immediately is like, is it just Breath of the Wild again? And a lot of people are saying that pretty much. I mean, the improvements over it are marginal. So I mean, and also I think I'm getting to a point where I'm seeing like just the attitude Nintendo holds towards their communities and fans, and more it's just gross to me, to the point where I'm not even able to look at their games and see anything good faith about them. It feels like a manipulation that they make good games, which obviously is like stupid, but emotionally that's where I'm at with the company. If they make a game I want to buy, I'll buy it. But I just kind of, I guess, find myself being like, I can do without that. I can do without this game, that game, this game, that game. I think this is gonna affect me to the point where Metroid Prime 4, if it's probably gonna release for the next generation of consoles, Switch console, whatever that ends up being. If that's the case, I'm gonna need to be sold on Prime 4 before I get it. Because I'm really not interested in just buying a whole console just for that game. So yeah.
The only reason I ever bought a PS4 was to play Bloodborne. So okay, I guess I can't really.
Well, again, if I'm sold on it, then I will. But that my goalposts will be higher for Prime 4 because the price tag just went up. If they're not going to release it on the default Switch and there's a Switch 2, they just raise the price tag from the price of a game to the price of a game plus a console.
Mm-hmm.
So like that means I'm gonna have to be extra sold on it. That makes sense. So you were probably extra sold on Bloodborne in that case.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, AAA probably will face a crash, but I would say gaming isn't dead at that point. Escapism is certainly not dead at that point. you're still gonna have your double A's and
I just
indies.
remembered.
Yeah.
You kind of have like in terms of like tabletop gaming, this like even more traditionally nerdy avenue. You kind of have the ever encroaching tendrils of Big Gay Incorporated working their way into there, and you had the
I
yeah
mean,
The
yeah
global homo.
CEO, I didn't like. I played like my fair share of Dungeons and Dragons over like the bloody freaking like during like 2020 to 2022 where it was massive because everyone had to stay home.
You're saying like
hmm
the ever
Right, I played
encroaching.
that, and literally everywhere, like everywhere where it's like the big gay corporations are like trying to get in, they're not getting in because you know what happens? People are like, oh hey, look, garbage. I'm just like,
well
let's
like
just like, boy, it's great that we can literally just like with this game is basically the most like
my problem
they
is
just
like
ignore them, bro. Like they
a
literally
lot
just go
of
make
like
their own homebrew and
existing
shit.
a lot of existing franchises are kind of being made into garbage, so that's my problem, right?
We're gonna lose. Yeah,
Like
it's like we
Pathfinder.
lost Star
Yeah,
Wars. We lost,
yeah, but the
Marvel. We
difference
lost a lot of
between
things.
like when it comes to
Mhm.
like TTRPGs, the difference is like fucking it doesn't matter. Like when you were a kid, you probably made your own board game. A fucking kid can make this kind of shit. Yeah, and
Well,
they can't copyright your OCs.
take the number of people who are interested in TTRPGs, right? Then take the number of people willing to like agree on a homebrew and play on that same homebrew is maybe a fourth or a third of like the total like even small population who
Nah.
even have the initial interest.
You don't get it. See, when you put up a like
Um,
when you like when you if you're playing online, right? You can
mhm.
put up whatever what it, like if you're hosting the game, it's your table. What you say goes. In real life, if you're like I've done D&D in real life, I hosted D&D in real life. It's my table, right? So like what I say goes. That's like and anyone who like wants to be at my table needs to heed that. If they don't,
Um,
well then fuck off. I don't want you at my table in the first
they're
place. You
gonna
haven't
leave
learned
then,
basic
obviously.
fucking etiquette.
They're gonna leave then. But like what okay, like say that because I don't think D&D has been as astroturfed as like other things have. Like
Hmm.
if you look at any World of Darkness TTRPG, it's a lot more prevalent, right? They got the trauma warnings in the beginning of label. Um,
Trigger
every other
warning.
character is gay. Yeah, that shit. Yeah, like even as far as Warhammer goes, it's going to be a more obscure
Well, they've
character,
been trying to push
Urda.
into Warhammer too, right? You
Yeah,
got the
it's
female
Well,
space marine idea.
what's
Urda, mother of the Primarchs, who strangely enough is the singular most probably the biggest woman moment in that entire setting, with like how greatly she fucked over humanity's future while trying to do the opposite.
Interesting. Yeah.
Lamel? I mean, I'm just saying, right? Like,
Well, I can say as well. For as bad as I think Nintendo is, at least they aren't doing the woke crap. They're just doing anti-consumer crap.
hmm
well, yeah, they hate consumers. They love wallets.
Yeah.
As far as gyms go, man, I gotta tell you, those like 2 years when they were shut down, that was super fucking annoying. Well, it was a year over here. Um, but this is something that the
CEO
powers
for
that
two
be, quote unquote, yeah,
full two
do need.
years, or CEO is just like, how am I supposed to make videos to send my friends if they don't videos my friends don't care about of
Okay,
me pumping
okay.
iron for the 17th time
So
this week?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I care, despite
But
the fact that I don't watch them. I care.
okay. Thank you. but like that's something that like they're willing to take away on a whim. But at the same time, it's something that like how do I put it? Forms of escapism that are like developing a talent or a skill for whatever reason go like entirely ungoverned, basically.
Well, yeah, it's expression.
Uh huh.
Well, I wouldn't say completely ungoverned because there's a whole lot of stuff that people try to restrict in terms
What do
of
you mean I
self-expression.
can't take enough? What do you mean I can't take enough trenbolone acetate to kill a bull male elephant?
I mean, for one example, it's copyright, right? You can't self-express in a
Uh huh.
way that depicts someone else's copyrighted content.
Well, like you can do fan art, right? You can't profit from it. That's the
Technically,
thing.
all fan art is infringement. Actually,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
It's just that they don't act on it because that would be impossible to enforce and also just really bad for their image. But Sega
Yeah,
does
that's
stuff
news to
like
me.
steal fan art of Sonic for their advertisements and stuff, and they've gotten away with that legally. Yeah,
What is with Sega, man? Are they one day are they gonna figure out how to make a Sonic game?
they're getting closer, I think.
Like,
So
what do
far,
you-
they've got a
fucking-
game where you can go fast.
I think
And that's
part
the
of
end.
why expression is like ungoverned is because like when you're making something yourself, it's infinitely harder to fucking castigate by law than when somebody else is delivering a product to you.
You mean distribution versus just you distributing it to yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why most often when they're doing anti-piracy stuff, they're going after distributors.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
The ATF breaks in house immediately kills my elderly dog before they do anything else.
The dog was distributing
Sir, are
meth.
you aware? Sir, are you aware that you illegally downloaded a copy of Baldur's Gate 3? It's like one of my favorite memes about the ATF is before they do literally anything else, they shoot the dog.
Dude, yeah. So I mean,
Uh,
oh yeah, you
are we
had-
ready to move to conclusions?
Yeah, I was wondering
or-
if there was anything else to discuss on the topic of escapism.
I mean, we did games, we did porn, we did tabletop RPGs, we did like more
Creative outlets.
expression.
We
yeah.
did the concept of what if escapism, like where do you define the limits of what counts as escapism, and it could be as broad or narrow as you want. It's really just
The only thing that I will add
Yeah.
is I think it's important to have an expressionary outlet of escapism on top of what else you might have.
I think that's a great
Okay.
idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever
And I will
whatever
add that.
escapism you dip into, make sure you also have a creative pursuit. I mean, that shouldn't be like a law of the universe like thing, but it's definitely like a good piece of advice. Express yourself. Don't just take in information. You should also output information. And that's just a healthy thing. Mr. I'm too sleepy for this podcast. Yeah, so conclusions. I suppose we've kind of gone over. Let's just recap. So the why is a lot of times to suspend any real life worries for at least the time that you spend playing your game or watching your movie or doing whatever. But it's also could be a positive interest in whatever mode of escapism as well. So it's not necessarily that your life has to suck in order for you to participate in escapism. The different kinds, which was, remind me what we what we talked about regarding the kinds. It's not coming to my memory.
You have okay. So I made the statement that there are two things that escapism wants to fulfill, right?
Right.
You want to be the hero, you want to not be alone, and you had the third, and that one was pure expression, right? So all forms of escapism.
Those are different kinds. I see what you mean. Yeah. So those are the kinds.
We'll fit into one of those categories, or one or the, or possibly multiple. Yeah.
Yep. I think so. And then there might be a fourth kind, which is just pure wish fulfillment.
Of what kind of wish?
I guess your wish might fall into one of those three categories then. Maybe that's just begging the question. I'm thinking of like your harem animes, your rom-coms, where it's just like, I just want to see just something nice that would never exist in reality. Or not even something nice, but something that just purely gratifies me.
Do CEOs dream of tomboy childhood friends?
Yeah.
You don't. Okay. Do robots scream of electric sheep?
They do.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
It's the novel that Blade Runner is based off of.
Cool. I knew it was quoted from somewhere, but so then we have the when it's healthy, and I think we've kind of come to the point of it's healthy as long as you can sustain your life outside of it. It starts becoming unhealthy the moment that it cuts into your self-sufficiency. And where that line is going to be different for different people, I think, depending on their needs and circumstances. The future of certain escapism avenues. I think escapism's not going anywhere anytime soon. As long as we are people and we live in reality, we're going to tell stories, we're going to play games, we're going to do a lot of things like that. Until basically scarcity ceases to exist, I believe that we will have escapism.
I was going to say that recently ESG funds have kind of started to run out, strangely enough.
Which is, one form of escapism going down the drain doesn't mean that escapism as a whole is, yeah.
Well, I said I think we're gonna see, in terms of traditional gaming, I think we're gonna see the rise of AA studios, and they're gonna balloon to being AAA, and we'll see if they make the same mistakes.
And if they do, then we'll just see the cycle repeat, and we as consumers will just get more of what we want.
Yep,
I see that as a win. And then in the future as well, technology is going to advance, and escapism. I think that we didn't address, I guess, there's fears of a certain singularity point where escapism overtakes reality, and some sense of what it means to be human is lost. I think that moment would be a post-scarcity moment, because as long as there is scarcity, reality will still require your attention. So, yeah. I don't know if there's much for me to add to that. fear.
I fundamentally like when someone says post scarcity, I have to question what they mean. Like,
We're
say
talking
I
Star
want
Trek
like
replicators.
okay, okay. Well, like Tim, like, do I have to tell you that instruments that break physical law to make Kami wet dreams come true don't
I
exist?
know, man.
Probably
I
never
know. I know.
will.
I know. But
Uh-huh.
that is the only reality I see in which escapism overtakes reality to the point where um something about humanity is lost. I think that humans will always want to form communities, whether they be local or international. Um, I guess there's more to be said. That's a topic to unwrap, which is IRL communities. Um, all of that. I've seen J Red go into this topic as well, and I tend to agree with him. So I guess I'll leave that open for if we want to do an episode 2 or something like that. But on the topic of escapism, maybe we'll just have that be a cliffhanger.
Mhm.
We'll see if episode 2 could be focused on community at that point. That's a nice end off point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, CEO, do you have any? You don't really have any place for people. You want people to like publicly contact you or anything like that.
Nope.
Neither do you, Albus. Right?
Nope.
Yeah. So they're just my buds. They're just my bros. So yeah. That'll do. That'll do. See you guys later.